You're watching Leafs Morning Take with host Nick Alberga and former NHLer Jay Rosehill. The show starts now.
All right, what is good, everybody? It's the Monday edition of Leafs Morning Take, getting set for Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final tonight from Sunrise. Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill. What's going on, Rosie?
What's going on, man? Start of a new week. Looking forward to the game tonight, seeing if the Oil can split down in FLA, where you just got back from.
So I was down there for Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final on Saturday. What an environment. A little disappointed I'm not there for Game 2. DJ Khaled is performing before this one outside the main concourse where I was doing some work for the NHL. But what a vibe, man. Even bumping into some of the Oilers Nation folks that are down there, like Tyler Yaremchuk, Jay, and Bag Milk and all those guys. I'm like, man, this is so cool for you. Like, when you get a chance to see your team play in a Stanley Cup Final, really got shivers just covering it, like being there for warm-up, being there for the intros, being there for the game, doing the pregame, like tee-up. Like, it was really, really cool stuff.
It was buzzing, hey? It seemed like a pretty wicked environment. I know Edmonton is absolutely flying right now, but no different down under there. I mean, they've got a lot to cheer about the last 3 years, and they've been to the finals before. They were there in '96, and I don't know. It seems like that town's just kind of embraced the hockey culture in the last few years, rightfully so, man. Their team's unreal.
Yeah, I was really curious, like, in general, what the atmosphere was going to be like. Like, I understand when you compare these two markets, it's very, very different. Like, I'm going to Edmonton on Thursday. I'm going to Game 3 and 4 in Edmonton, and I think for everything I thought Game 1 was in terms of an environment, I think it's going to be like up, 100%, 200% in Edmonton. It's going to be a different vibe overall, but I think they brought it. Like, all I want for a Stanley Cup Final is atmosphere, but I want a loud crowd, and I thought the crowd was outstanding. And you're so right. Wherever you are in this world, if your team is good, people will show up. And I thought it was a good showing by a fan base that gets a lot of heat on a yearly basis,
Yeah, what was it like compared to the All-Star game, which you went to not this year, but the year before?
Yeah.
Totally different vibe, I'm guessing.
Yeah, like, the All-Star weekend is a lot different because you're going to bring in fan bases from around, the hockey world. I don't think there'd be that many Panthers fans actually at All-Star weekend. I think you're going to see a lot of different fan bases, but I thought it was electric. I had a chance to be down by the ice for bits and pieces. I like to mosey around the arena a bit. I don't like to stay in one location, but I like different vantage points. The one thing I kept getting back to in the actual game, how amazing must it feel for that fan base, the ownership, the players, to have a goalie that good? Like, Sergei Bobrovsky was out of this world, and the way that game started, I should say, where he went like flip-flopping like 38 seconds in, I'm like, this is going to be a long night, but man, he shut the door. How amazing would that be in Leafs Nation if we can get a guy like that?
Yeah, I mean, you even hear their players in their interviews saying, well, we got Bobby back there. That's what we got Bobby for. And it's such a layer of protection. It's not a layer. It's like the whole foundation of what your like house is built for. And you can just go out without worrying about that last layer being, vulnerable. And it's just, it gives you such a layer of confidence. And yeah, he was wicked in Game 1. I felt like the Oilers could have done a better job burying their chances, to be honest. I thought they made him look good. No question he was good, but I mean, I feel like some of the chances they had, like Hyman specifically, a couple of those ones, you just go one way and along the ice, and if you hold on to it a little longer, elevate it a bit, it's a goal. You're there, you're getting your chances. So I don't know, talking to Oilers fans after that one, it's kind of a double-edged sword. It's like, hey, if we play like that every game, we're not going to lose. It's also like, hey, you played like that and you got shut out. So it's two ways to look at it, but I think they will be flying tonight, and I don't know. I look for the big boys to really elevate and solve Bobber tonight.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. We're going to get to the last call later on, presented by Bet365, but that's my ideology, where it's like, I think I'm going to be on Florida again tonight because they didn't play their best game and they still beat you. Like, that would really, really concern me from the Edmonton perspective. Having said that, you gain a split in the first 2 games of the series headed home. I think you're feeling good, but I think that Florida team, man, is pretty damn good. Watching them play again, dude, you would have loved the physicality first and foremost, and what that does for a building. How often do we talk about that on this show, Scotiabank Arena? A couple of hits, how we can get the crowd going. Dude, the first period was like out of this world. I even noticed my buddy Adam Enrique had 7 hits in the game. Like every player, and that's the cool thing about the Stanley Cup Final. The buy-in is up and down that lineup. You could tell every player, including McDavid, Barkov, all the big boys, knew this one was for keeps. And you got to set a tone early in the series. And that was so cool to see just everybody hitting. Like I thought an Usher in section 320 was going to get hit. Like everybody was getting hit. It was awesome.
It's playoffs, man. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it feels like the third round might, guys are kind of starting to feel it a little bit, and you get through, you get past, and you get into the finals, and you're like, there's 2 teams left. We beat 1 team. We get 4 wins. We've been doing that, for weeks and weeks and weeks. We get 4 more, and we win the cup forever. Your name on that thing, and I think it's resonates with guys a little bit, and they come out flying. And yeah, there's nothing. I mean, there's a reason physicality is a big portion of the game, and it's a big reason why some teams have success at this point in the year. It's awesome, man. I'm looking forward to tonight in a big way.
The execution's big for me too. I really can't fault Stuart Skinner. I know it's easy for in terms of a scapegoat for Oilers fans, but to lose a game 3-0, I thought he was solid. He did a good enough job to win that game, but ultimately, if you can't score, you can't win. And Bobrovsky again, out of this world. The big story as to why Florida grabs the 1-0 series lead in the Stanley Cup Final. But even the way the Panthers score the goals, like the cross crease to Verhaeghe. The breakdown, obviously, defensively by Edmonton leads to the Evan Rodriguez snipe. I was actually in an elevator for that. I have a good elevator story too, but it just seems like the Panthers know how to score at the most opportune times, right? How often do we talk about that from the Maple Leafs perspective? They can't dig deep and find that goal. It always seems like Florida can make that clutch play,
Yeah, it does. I mean, if you break it down, you give them chances, they're usually going to bury. You could say Skinner maybe could have had the first one.
Yeah.
Second one, no real chance. But if you break it down, you see Darnell Nurse doing weird, odd, out of positional things like on both of them, and that's been a story for sure. They came to his aid and defended him, and he stood up there, against Dallas. But it's tough. You can't give a team at this time of the year too many looks. They're going to be too potent. They're going to be too good and poised, and they're going to bury on their chances. And Oilers just got to find a way to bury on their chances, which they just did not do in game 1. And Skinner's, you're not blaming it on him if he lets 2 in. You're giving yourself a chance. But it's a big test. And like I said, at this time of the year, both teams are so damn good. There's not a lot of leeway, and your mistakes, they're going to be under a microscope every time.
Man, I was talking about it. My irrational fear in life is being stuck in an elevator, and it happened. I was on the
Really?
concourse level at Amarant Bank Arena. We had finished our pregame show, headed up to the press box. And luckily, this elevator was glass because we got to the top floor and like one gate opened, but the other didn't. And then all of a sudden it shut. And we were lucky in the fact that we could see people outside and we were waving down. But there were a bunch of different people in the elevator and people were starting to freak out. We were in there for about 15 minutes. We had little kids, had to calm them down a bit. But man, until you've had something like that transpire, you don't know how it feels. I'm pretty claustrophobic, but again, luckily it was like a glass elevator, so you can oversee the entire concourse.
Little Nicky freaking out. So what, you couldn't pry the doors open and get those kids out, or what? You just stood there in the fetal position and started shaking?
No, we tried. There was a couple of us that tried to pry the door open, but staff ultimately came like 15 minutes later. This guy used his little tool and opened it like really, really quickly. It was really, really random, but some of the people in there, you could tell fairly quickly whose irrational fear is being stuck in an elevator because they were freaking out. I'm like, we're gonna get out of here at some point, right?
Yeah, that shit happens. I don't know. It doesn't bother me whether you're in a room or an elevator or what, but I know some people do not like the idea of that. Worst fear ever. Kind of a nightmare is being stuck in an elevator. I don't know if they think the cable's going to snap, they're going to fall, or what the deal is, but yeah, people don't like that shit.
I was more concerned missing a Leafs trade or something involving Mitch Marner. We'll get to that a bit later on. I thought it's always unique when I'm able to go to events like this and congregate with the rest of the hockey world, like the who's who of media were there, league personnel. It's really cool. I mean, having the opportunity to work in this industry for the better part of the last decade and then some, the people you meet, but to see them in person, talk to people. The number one question I got from a lot of people around the league, what's going to happen with Mitch Marner? But talking to a lot of people, it still sounds like Marner could be on his way out, and it'll be fascinating to see what transpires over the next couple weeks. But the big newsmaker for me was the whole salary cap situation, rising by 4.5 million, Rosie, from 83.5 to 88 next season. I think they had it projected for like 87.7. So any extra cent you can get from a Maple Leafs perspective, you have to feel good about the way things went.
Yeah, I think everyone, likes to see that go up. It gives them more room to play and to work. The salaries will go up as well, but it takes a while to catch up. It's interesting, man. Honestly, everything boils down to what's going to happen. What are they going to do? It all boils down to Mitch and what's going to happen with him. Can they make him make a deal? Is he willing? Again, we don't know what those talks are like. If he says, if it's the right situation, if he's even mentioned teams or comparables or probabilities of going here, there, or where he fits. I don't know if they're playing possum, if there's no communication, that kind of stuff can get stagnant and then go, straight to hell in a handbasket in a hurry. So it's a delicate thing for Tree Living to try and navigate for sure. But, my fear is kind of that, the draft will come and go, free agency will come and go. And it's like, okay, this doesn't really look like it's going to be happening too easily. And all of a sudden you don't know how to build your team if Mitch is going to be there with that salary or if he's not. And it makes a huge difference, obviously, one or the other.
Yeah, and you need to have like contingency plans in place, right? I think if the Mitch Marner situation doesn't work itself out, but again, as Luke Fox brought up last week on the show, it is important to stress just their verbiage on things, but they also haven't come out and said Mitch Marner, we're looking to extend him. Like I think it's been a lot different than the narrative last summer where they came out and said we will do everything possible to bring Nylander back, and you always have to be careful to read into directly, type of these things, but I think that's sort of my read on the whole situation. But you're right from a salary cap standpoint. The Maple Leafs obviously always involved in whatever the number is going to be. But this summer feels a little different because of the amount of cap coming off the books. Like even Jake Muzzin's contract, that long contract finished with this team. TJ Brody, like they're going to look to do a couple things, but for the first time in a long time, there's a lot of moving parts. Like usually every offseason, man, it's always the same concrete names in place. And like, how can we work around the edges, work on the bottom six? It really, really feels like the first line in a long time where there can be some big time changes, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it's neat. You think they're going in the right direction. I think they got the personnel in place. It's exciting to think about, what the team will look like, what they'll play like under Craig Berube. And then, yeah, like you said, there could be, opportunity in the next couple of years to get some big time money off the books and kind of go shopping and look at the big free agents and really kind of make a splash and not be like, well, we know what we need, but we just can't go get it. That's the plight of a lot of teams in the salary cap era. But for once, the Maple Leafs can kind of be like, we know what we need and we can go take our pick and be the highest bidder. And, you don't want them to go shoot the moon and get into a bidding war and get tied to an ugly contract or anything like that, which teams do all the time, trying to get the guy, the piece that they think they need. But at least you have the opportunity and flexibility to try to get the guys that you need in and big names, guys that make a difference, guys that have made a difference, guys that are in their prime, guys that Toronto hasn't had in a while that everyone's been begging for. It's exciting.
It is, and the reporting, just to get back to the Marner situation, I think is going to be fun to document over the next couple of months because I think the PR game is a big part of this whole thing. You even watch what's transpired in the last week and a half alone with Darren Ferris and those leak comments and Brad Treliving coming back. Then it surfaced over the weekend that Mitch Marner won't be approached until the Leafs find a team and an offer that makes sense to them. I think both sides are cognizant of what's at stake. And also, like, what's at stake if this gets too busy in the media? I'm very, very curious to see if it gets hairy. Do you think there gets to a point in time where it gets kind of mucky out there and very contentious on both sides?
Well, yeah, I think that's the fear, and that's
Yeah.
the delicate part for Tree Living. Like, you don't want to go to war with these guys. You want to tread lightly. You don't want to insult anybody. You don't want to feel like anyone's getting, pushed aside or disrespected. It's a lot of egos and players and management and agents, and a lot of posturing and positioning and where we fit and who's keeping their stock high and all these crazy things. And if you start getting that disparity between each other, you can start to go in your own direction. All of a sudden, the screw you happens, the communication lines break down, the media starts getting fed little bits and pieces here, and they run with that. And it can get ugly for sure,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like, listen, I'm going to finish my contract. That's all I owe you. And then I'm out of here. And then it's like, oh, is he screwing the Leafs? Like lots of things can happen that aren't ideal. But at the end of the day, if they have an honest conversation, hey, Mitch, with the situations and where we're at, where the team is at and how good of a player you are, we feel like, it might be in the best direction to try to, move you to somewhere that makes sense. We know you have the power to do so. If that happens, are you interested at all? Is it on your radar to move your no trade clause? Well, if the right position comes, it depends on blah, blah. Okay, set that out, then leave it alone, and then go find something that's appealing and try to sell it to Mitch and his agent and see if you can get something done. I think that's where they're at right now, but I would not want to get into a mudslinging contest in the media by any stretch of the imagination.
Especially this media in Toronto. Every day there's a news story, but obviously we'll document it as we move forward here, getting closer and closer to the entry draft in Vegas and also free agency coming up on July 1. At the Leafs Nation 401, if you're watching right now, please hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. That would really help us out. Leafs Morning Take, wherever you find your podcast. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review. And don't forget to visit theleafsnation.com for the very latest on all things Toronto Maple Leafs. This opening segment is brought to you by Greta Bar YYZ. For a good time, find Greta, 590 King Street West. Weekly specials, live sports, over 60-plus arcade games. Let the games begin. Go big. Go to Greta Bar YYZ. So oftentimes in the NHL world, we talk about crazy season and wacky season. We're firmly into it, right? The Stanley Cup Final is underway. The draft is 15-plus days away. Free agency is just around the corner. And in the last week alone, some names have been linked to the Toronto Maple Leafs. And rest assured, Rosie, I think every goaltender available will be linked to Toronto because, A, I think it's good for all parties involved to have the Leafs linked to a goalie. You're trying to bid up that price. But number two, they are seriously looking at upgrading the crease, which is excellent news. But I guess the first name to enter the fray, and it shouldn't come as a shock because Brad Treliving obviously was a part of the Flames organization for a long, long time, brought him in to Calgary, is Jacob Markstrom. On the latest edition of the 32 Thoughts podcast, Elliot Friedman linked New Jersey, Ottawa, and Toronto to Jacob Markstrom. He has 2 years left in his deal at $6 million a season and a full no movement clause. Do you like that fit?
Markey?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to buddies that are, follow the Flames pretty good. He's a solid goaltender. He's had a little bit of a streak here and there. I do believe he's had some personal issues with, wife and family stuff, pregnancy things, and not to get too into the personal stuff, but I think he's had some personal things go on that could have hindered his performance, especially as a goalie, where every little mistake is so highlighted and every little loss of focus and things can really start to snowball on you. But people believe he's a top 10, possibly top 5 goaltender. I want it to be a guy who is rock solid between the ears. It's a difficult market to go into. If you get a guy that's been streaky or fighting it, or maybe on the decline or on the back nine of his career, and you throw him in Toronto and expect him to be this Vezina winner, it just doesn't happen, man. You just gotta understand that getting into that market, you have to understand that it's going to be harder to perform than anything. You don't come there and just become this god out of the blue. It's harder to play up to your potential in Toronto than anywhere else. So to get a guy that's streaky or on the decline or something is very difficult. I'm not saying Markstrom is that way, but it would depend on what the deal looks like. What are you giving up? What's the cap situation? I know he makes $6 million a year, which is all right with me. That's what you're gonna have to pay for a high-end goaltender. It's not like it's $9 million or $10 million. And then again, we've talked about on this show how important that position is. I think that you're okay to spend money there. It is the last line of defense. Look at the series that are happening, in the conference finals and beyond. Everyone has got a goaltender. He's always the talk of the game, of the series. Always. It's the most important position in the playoffs. And I don't know why people don't really value that. They think other places, but it's just like, name a average goaltender. I mean, you could say Skinner, but Skinner's been great, especially since he got put back in Vancouver there. And it's I don't know. I have Allmark that no one's really talking about. A guy that just won the Vezina. He kind of got pushed out by Swayman in Boston to go to their rivals of the Toronto Maple Leafs and try to push them out would be kind of a cool story. And to me, there's a guy that's absolutely rock solid. We've talked about Soros. It depends if you can work it into the Marner trade. If that becomes something, what do you have to give up for him? All over the place, but Markstrom's a very good goalie, no question.
He is. I don't see Allmark as a fit because I think it's going to be tough for Toronto and Boston to deal. And if I'm the Maple Leafs, it's probably the last team I want to trade with, considering they own me already. Like the last 2 decades, and then you're going to trade for their goalie. I just don't think it's a good fit. I think to a degree, I think Markstrom would make a lot of sense. Like, I like the price tag. It's on a lengthy term. He's got 2 years left at $6 million a season. I
Yeah.
think he's the type of guy who can push Joseph Woll along. I think in a perfect world, in 2 years from now, Joseph Woll is the guy. He has proven to be the guy. And then you can get like your prototypical backup. So I think from a fit perspective, it works. To your point, like, that is my lasting memory with Jacob Markstrom, is the blow up in the playoffs against the Edmonton Oilers. It's unfortunate to say, because I think the last couple of years he's found it again, in between the years. But I just want somebody I can rely upon. And the more and more I read into this situation, the more and more it sounds like the Leafs are going to find another stopgap or another hopeful. Like, they've been linked again to Laurent Brossoit, who was the backup for Connor Hellebuck in Winnipeg, who by all accounts wants to be the number one guy somewhere, or at least fight for the number one job. Unfortunately, there are only so many like high-end goalies in this league that I'm starting to become very, very doubtful they're actually going to grab one. Like, I think Toronto's including this more about getting the price tag up. If there's one thing we learned from Tanev, and we learned from all the hoopla around Zadorov and those trades, it's going to be difficult for Toronto and Calgary to make a trade here.
I know. Why do you think that is? Just past
Yeah,
relationships and
yeah.
egos and BS like that. Yeah, I know. I mean, there was a lot of focus on that. They had some prospects that we needed, not
Hmm.
prospects, but some prospective trade bait that we needed on our roster. And it wasn't like the Leafs were the only team looking at these guys, but we didn't get any of them. It didn't look like they got close. Why that is, you can speculate, but I don't know. When you have past relationships, you think that it would either be a good thing or else it'll be a bad thing. And depends on what the relationship is, how things exited and how things ended. I'm not saying anything was ugly or contentious with Tree living or anything like that, but I mean, you do remember back to the draft when Tree wasn't even allowed on the floor for some unbelievably odd reason, and that was kind of stuck on there by Calgary, was it not? So just weird things going on, which would make you think maybe they're not with the best of relationship. But again, I don't, I don't care who they deal with or anything like that. But yeah, I want one of those top like 6, 7 goalies in the league, just so you can say there. We don't have to have these expectations. We can just trust and leave the guy alone and not have the guy feel like, oh my God, they want me to be Marty Brodeur in his prime. And you know what I mean? It's tough. I want the guy just to be able to go in there, be chill and do his thing, and work on the other aspects of the roster. Because when you do look at Bobrovsky and that team, it's like, how nice is that? How nice would it be if Toronto had that, where you just, you can, the way they play, you can be offensively, gifted and pepper them and then take a kind of a shift off. And what the hell was that? And turnover bad, or oh my God, a breakaway on the power play and they're going to get a shorty and boom, boom. You got a guy that just turns it aside and can kind of get you back on your bearings. So I really have been looking at, Soros, for example, if you can make a deal and get him without giving up anything that you don't want to give up, would be ideal.
Well, that's the other thing too, man, the price tag. A lot of speculation that the Flames want a high-end pick and they want a top prospect. So reading in between the lines there from the Maple Leafs perspective, I'm not sure. I think it's the 23rd overall pick in round 1, and say Fraser Minton. Would you do something like that? I don't think it's going to get the job done to begin with. I think they're looking at they want a number 10 or 11 overall type pick, and that's why I think New Jersey's going to be in there. That's why I think Ottawa's going to be in there. Those teams have that type of those types of assets. But with a Markstrom deal, would you be open to dealing like a Minton type player?
Our first pick and Minton for Markstrom at $6 million for 2 years. No, I don't like that. I
Really?
think that's too steep. I would rather, I would be happier getting a Mitch Marner trade with Soros coming back with how does that look? How does that stack up? Are we getting more for the Soros? Are we not? Are we giving up? Like, what's the deal with that? And you bring in that guy, and you feel like you don't have to give up Minton in a first round, or we make the changes that we want to make. Like, I want to make a change where Mitch Marner's not one of the front runners at 9, 10, 11 million dollars in the playoffs, relying on him to get the whole job done and get him to where the Panthers are right now. I've made up my mind on whether that's going to happen or not. So I would like to, kill two birds with one stone more than, sell the farm and get a guy that, hopefully is good and still
Yeah.
have another issue on your hands elsewhere. So to me, I'd rather have Mitch come in a package with a goaltender and have that deal done in that sense.
It just stinks because, like anything in life, I think if you're a trading company, you want to make a trade that you're completely happy with.
It's
And
hard.
I think outside of Saros, there isn't really a guy where it's like, I need to get him. Like, I like Allmark a lot. Again, I don't think that's going to be a good fit with Boston unless you include a third team and Toronto gets him that way, or Markstrom. Again, it just tells you how hard it is to find that bona fide stud in this league. And that's why I think if Nashville elects to trade a Saros, I think there's going to be a pretty damn big line. But I would just, in a perfect world, Rosie, I would love to have a conversation in a year from now, and it doesn't include the crease. But it seems like they're trending the direction where they're going to go out and get another stopgap guy for 2 or 3 years, and there's the likelihood that the guy comes out and he gets lit up like a Samsonov, and you're starting to wonder what the hell is going on. Because I think you make the great point earlier on, regardless of who it is, they come to Toronto, and this dates back years, and they're just not the same guy. So you almost have to prepare for that.
Well, yeah, it always drives me nuts when they get a free agent or they sign someone coming off this career year, right? And
Yeah.
they played heads and shoulders over their head and played with this centerman who just loaded up the points and everything looks so great on paper. And this guy had a career year. And then you sign him to a big contract and then parade him into Toronto. And then they're like, all right, we got him. Now go do even better than that. And it's like, fuck, good luck, man. Like you went and had a career year. Out of 10 years, that's the first year this guy's done this in Columbus, playing with XYZ. Look at the external factors. Come to Toronto, huge spotlight, all the microphones in your face, all the expectations. As soon as you have a hiccup, people are picking you apart. Like, it is not easy. And I just don't like it when they expect people to come to Toronto and play even above their heads from what they were doing when they were playing above their heads. It's like, guys, that's a huge ask, and it usually doesn't work out well. So expectations have to be tempered, and I don't like going and grabbing guys off a flash in the pan year and bringing them to Toronto, expecting them to be even better than that. It just doesn't happen. So I do think that the market needs to play a factor, as well as your expectations on how a guy's going to perform.
Yeah, I'm still trying to track down David Clarkson to get him on this show. I just, I don't know if it's going to happen, Rosie. I know you want that interview bad, don't you?
Clarky, the mouthpiece. I'm sure he's a good guy, but he loved to chirp out there. I'll tell you that. He was nonstop.
Did you
He's
ever
good at his
dance
job.
him?
Huh?
Did you ever dance him?
Yeah, I did. I think one time I was asking him to go. He was telling me to beat it, and then I went and had a hard shift running around. Then he jumped me as I'm taking my line change. Typical Clarky. But yeah, I know things like that, man. You come and expect them to come and be Joe Sakic just because you want them to be, and it's just, you got to remember, man, it's just not easy to perform in that market, obviously.
Man, I remember that like it was yesterday, the David Clarkson signing, and everybody was jacked. And like, here's our holy one, here's our power forward, and oh my God, he was brutal. Other names in the chat: Mike Komisarek, your boy Jeff Finger, who we've been trying to track down for this show. A lot of these guys go MIA after their time in Toronto too, which is kind of funny.
Oh, Fingy, man, he is an absolute beauty down in Wisconsin. Loves to be in his log cabin in the woods outside of it, and he tells the story, man. He was like, I was sitting on my couch, agent calls me, yeah, there's a couple of people that want you, and then there was this bidding war, and Ron Wilson had played against Finger in the playoffs when Wilson was in San Jose, I believe, and he shut down Joe Thornton completely. And Wilson just said, I want him. I don't give a shit. I want him. I want him. And all of a sudden there's this bidding war. He gets 12 million. And he said, from that second on, there was this massive dark cloud on my shoulders that never left. And it was a total battle. Like, from the day it signed, he looked at TSN and the panel was absolutely ripping Jeff Finger. And he said, from that day, I never stopped getting ripped. Like, he didn't even get to touch the ice before he started getting ripped and scrutinized, and it didn't work out. It's a tough market to come into, man.
I remember my buddy bought a Jeff Finger jersey. He had to be one of one in that collection, but definitely a throwback name that one day we would love to get on this show. Very unlikely, though. Just to wrap on the Markstrom conversation, career numbers: 483 appearances, a 2.73, a 909. So potentially there could be a fit there. Meantime, the Leafs have been linked to two more right-handed shooting defensemen. This is going to be a theme, Rosie, over the next 3 weeks or so. But the fourth period's Dave Pagnotta linking both Brett Pesce of Carolina and Sean Walker, who finished the year with Colorado to the Maple Leafs, makes a lot of sense. This is great that they're finally, I think, going to find at least one right-handed shooting D. That's been a thing missing with this franchise in like the last decade, I would say.
Yeah, it's a big hole that could be plugged, right? And like Walker and Pesce aren't on the same level, are they?
No, I think Pesci's way above Walker. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. But Walker's kind of, I think he's big body, got that physicality, like can complement some of the other guys that are
Fast.
on there. You think about the strides McCabe made this year and how he was a presence, and all of a sudden, with the right additions, and you slot Morgan Riley into a role that he's probably better suited for, get a stud and then kind of a half stud. Like say you get both of those guys, all of a sudden you're looking around at the back end going, this is starting to look like one of those, tough, big boy, solid, come together back ends that go places. And it's nice to see them start to look in the right direction. And again, the big question mark is, well, what are we able to do? Do we have Mitch Marner on the books or not? So I would love more than anything if that situation got sorted out at the draft. It would just put this thing on the highway to actually making moves and having, answers rather than question marks like there is right now.
You're right. And so the report suggests that the Leafs and Predators, among others, are expected to court Pesce on July 1. Again, there's going to be a laundry list of teams that go after this guy. I think they're going to be in on Brandon Montour as well, as we see him play in the Stanley Cup Final for the Florida Panthers. But I won't lie. I salivate over the idea of a Morgan Riley, Brett Pesce number one unit for the Maple Leafs. I think it's a perfect blend. I think it would really help a guy like Morgan Riley. You look at the career of Brett Pesce as well, very underrated, I think, because of the market he plays with or plays in. And I think from the Walker perspective, there's going to be a lot of teams involved on him too. He's coming off a breakout season. You're always careful with that, but he was great with Philly, gets traded to Colorado, not really known for his point production, but he's a fantastic skater, can play physical at times. I think he's a guy better suited for your middle pairing, which they also need help with.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, just structure it properly where, you have some depth in there. You got it sorted out. Your power play, your PKers, your shot blocking is so huge this time of year. Guys that can just move the puck properly, keep things to the outside, be positionally sound, and just be those rocks back there who can get on the point and, get the puck in the hands of the big boys too. So yeah, those guys look fantastic. I do, worry about a guy coming off a career year and scooping him up and overpaying. And then all of a sudden, oh, that was a flash in the pan. Now we're stuck with this guy at $4 million or whatever it is. And it's like, you be careful. But again, I just keep going back to, well, how aggressive do we want to be on July 1 if we don't know where we're going to be at in the salary cap? We don't know how against it we're going to be. Are we, and again, just a big fat Mitch Marner and his contractor sitting there going, do we have to account for this or not? And it would be nice to know sooner than later.
It would. And I think you're always mindful too on July 1. A lot of mistakes. We just talked about David Clarkson, man. A lot of mistakes are made on July 1, and the salary cap's going up. It takes one team to make some ridiculous offer. And I think the Leafs, obviously, they're going to be, but have to be very mindful of that whole situation, how free agency works, who's involved. There are just so many moving parts, but I think you want to make the right decisions. I think you want to scour the trade market first and foremost, but you also want to look at that perspective and say, hey, we don't want to leave free agency without at least one defenseman, if not two. But you're so right on the Marner thing. I would love to clear that up before you move forward, but they are going to have some money to figure out on the blue line, right? With Brody coming off, with Muzzin coming off. So there's going to be a bit of money to play with, but it's interesting to see where they would allocate those dollars, because you talk about the crease too. They got that decision as well.
Yeah, and going back to the D thing, I just think it would be awesome to get Morgan Riley in a role that he's maybe more suited for. I think they're asking a bit too much of him. They want him to be Lidstrom back there mixed with Niedermayer, mixed with, it's just like, hey, guys, like he can only do so much back there and he can't play above his head in this market. To get someone in there to kind of complement him, to kind of switch hit with them and to share some of the responsibilities and expectations, all of a sudden both guys are playing above what you even expected. And it's because they can kind of share that. But when one guy's standing out there with the spotlight on him, which is Morgan Riley on that back end, and he's expected to do everything, it's just not realistic. So to get him in a position. He's a great D-man. He's got offensive, but he's just not a world beater all by himself. So to complement him a little bit, I think you'll see Morgan Riley raise his game even higher and be the guy that everyone knows that he can be in this market.
Well, we talk about this all the time. How many different partners has Morgan Riley had in his tenure as a Maple Leaf? Maybe the strongest was Ron Hainsey. I loved him with Luke Schenn. Look what Schenner did for Morgan Riley's game in last year's postseason. He was tremendous. I think that would be a goal too, is to find some stability first and foremost for Morgan Riley. He takes a lot of heat in this market, took a lot of heat following the season. People want him traded. I think that would be a bad decision. I think you need to find a way to support around Morgan Riley and take the load off of him. Because every time you think about the blue line, it's just like Morgan Riley and then everyone else. So I think the smart play is holding on to Riley. The other thing I would add too, and I think you'd probably agree, the Leafs don't move the puck very well on the blue line. They just don't have that type of guy. And I think you have to bring in at least one puck mover. We thought it was going to be John Klingberg. He played 15 games. That's why I think Brandon Montour would be a solid addition. You talk about the load for Morgan Riley. In a perfect world, you bring in a right-handed shooting defenseman like a Montour who can run PP1 and lessen the load for a Morgan Riley. That's a perfect world, though.
Yeah, 100%, man. It's if you look at the teams that are killing it right now, and like Bouchard for Edmonton, like to draft him and have him come to fruition it's just another weapon on there. Like it's, you go there with like a three-legged animal and it just doesn't function properly. And then you get that fourth leg there and it's like, oh, this cat's ready to pounce anywhere. You can go high, you can go low, move it around, spread the PK out and get it to those weapons of Matthews and get it to Nylander and get, you know what I mean? And have that extra layer where it seems like sometimes they're kind of beating a dead horse down low and it's easier to defend because you know where they're trying to get it to, and it's just up top is not a threat. But all of a sudden you got some guy walking down Broadway, and that needs to be honored as well by the PK, or he's gonna walk down Broadway. You get that extra option, that extra look, that extra threat, and it gets the PK running around a little bit. All of a sudden you get your power play clicking, and as we know, we need more looks and more factors and more threats on that power play, especially in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's the thing too. And I want to see this team play a bit more north. Just a couple years back, they were really playing with speed, and I think they went away from that the last couple years. And again, you need guys who are going to move the puck and get it to your big boys up front. So we'll monitor that. We'll also monitor the new Amazon Prime docu-series coming out in the fall. It's debuting in October. The same producers as Drive to Survive. I'm guessing you've watched that, being a big golf fan.
Well, Drive to Survive is the F1 one, and then
is it? Okay.
And then the golf one was Tee It Up or something T. Anyway,
I think it's around the same mentality though, right?
100%. Yes, 100%. I would I love those series. I think we've talked about them before on the show. Just the access they give you to behind the scenes. I think as a kid, especially, to look and get behind the curtain a little bit and say, what are these guys like? Because you know how kids fall in love with these hockey players, and everything they have is Austin Matthews this or Nylander that, and they get to see their interviews, but we know how friggin' painfully brutal and useless those are. And in these type of series, you can go behind that curtain and say, oh my God, look at him having lunch, shooting the breeze with his buddy. Look at him getting treatment afterwards. Look at him warming up. Look how high he can jump. Like, just follow the guy around. Like, look what he drives. Look at his car. Oh, that's what it looks like behind the, that's what it looks like down underneath the Scotiabank. It's just every little bit of access you don't normally get. Those things bring a fan to, which I just think is absolutely unbelievable. And I remember how much I would appreciate that as a kid, loving the NHL and these players and wanting to see more. It gives that access, and it's pretty neat. So I'm excited to see it.
Accessibility is what we're looking for. Thanks to our guy Jeremiah writing in. Full Swing was the golf show. Tammy also writing in Breakpoint. So it's going to be that type of production, I think, is kind of cool. So the names involved: Connor McDavid, Matthew Tkachuk, Jacob Trouba, Leon Draisaitl, David Pasternak, Jeremy Swayman, Quinn Hughes, Jack Eichel, Philip Forsberg, Gabriel Landeskog, and last but not least, William Nylander. And so they put out a trailer, I guess it was on Thursday. I won't lie, there was something that really got to me. It was a clip of Willie Nylander talking about how disappointed he wasn't playing in the Boston series. And all I could think of was a player who just couldn't play but had time to film a series. Am I thinking about it the wrong way, Rosie? That's the question.
I think so, yes. would it sting to go back to think about the injury issues like Austin Matthews and Nylander? Like, are you serious? Everything's copacetic coming right up to game 1 of the playoffs, and then whammy, we just get rained on with this awful news. Whatever it was what it was. But let's just say you have this Amazon thing going on, and all of a sudden you're injured. Sorry, guys, no cameras. Williams hurt, so the show's off. You don't get to finish your segment on him. No more access. They'd be like, are you kidding me? Like, it just, I don't blame William Nylander at all for still being part of it when he's hurt. Is it frustrating? Is it a reminder to the Leafs fans of what happened? Sure. But to hold it against him is not fair, in my opinion.
Could tell you Leaf fans are pissed off about it. And if you go watch the clip, they're like filming him watching the game. But this is a guy who had a head injury and migraine issues, and they're showing him watching the game. But I don't know. Just this is what I do. I find things to talk about, and reading that and seeing that, it was just a bit different for me, I'll say. But I think in general, I like these series. It's going to feature in-depth interviews with key players, their rivals, teammates, coaches, and family. And it peels back the curtain. I mean, you had the opportunity, the chance to play in this league. You played for the Maple Leafs. It's kind of cool to see the behind-the-scenes look of everything that's transpired, and maybe a couple F-bombs in there too. I heard Austin Matthews, by the way, will make several cameo appearances, so they'll be in there too.
Yeah, it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it, man. Like I said, it's a positive thing. Would I love it myself? If I was a coach or a GM, would I be thrilled that, Netflix or Amazon comes in and says, we're going to fill this thing with, producers and cameramen and microphones, and they're going to be flinging their little cord around everyone. They got to step over it with their skates off. Fuck, like what a distraction. So I don't love that idea of it. Just from a sake of if you're trying to run a team and trying to win. But I didn't realize it's already been filmed. It's already done. It's coming out in November. I thought they were going to start filming in November and kind of release it in segments. But it kind of, to me, I'm happy to hear that it's over and the distraction is come and gone. And whether it played a factor in their performance or not, I do not know. But I guess all that's left to do is watch the show.
Which players are you excited to hear more about? Like out of that list that I just mentioned, to me, it's Matthew Tkachuk. Just again, watching game 1 the way I did in the crowd, I was laser focused on Matthew Tkachuk, how he plays the game, balls to the wall every shift. He's just trying to hit you out of the rink and intimidate you. I love that.
He's awesome. Everything about him is pretty awesome. I don't care. Anybody who's going to show some personality and be a little bit loose and show your true self and not be guarded about what you say and not give the mundane answers and the bullshit. And like, I don't know. I don't really need to see a kid go home and play mini sticks with his kid. And
Yeah, I know.
It's like, fuck, just show me, do something cool, be real, be authentic, be entertaining. You know what I mean? So hockey players have a tough time doing that. They don't like the spotlight. They don't like to say me. They don't like to stand out a lot traditionally. Some of these newer, younger guys are kind of stepping out of that role. I think they're used to it with, social media and having their own accounts and, being able to show their personality a little bit. So that's all I look for, to be honest, is to get some access, some behind the scenes stuff to see, have fans see how it really works there, and then maybe get to know the players a little bit more intimately with some personality would be nice.
Were you there in Toronto when they shot the Winter Classic series?
No, I just missed that. Yeah. And the 24/7 as well was pretty awesome. I think that was when Clarkson and them were there. But no, that was a wicked series. I loved the access of that. It sucked that it was with COVID and they were all fucking spread apart and wearing masks the whole time. It was painful. And that's just the way
all or nothing.
Yeah, all or nothing. That's what it was, not 24/7. I like those series. I think 24/7 is the best one they've ever done. Just with getting it right, as just brings you along the ride of being in the NHL. Like every step of the way you're there. And they for some reason, they just kind of, like, I'm thinking of the Penguins one, for example, where you were just kind of like a fly on the wall. It wasn't like you were front and center and everyone's acting weird because a camera's there. I thought you literally saw how the guys behaved, and it was like pre-game meal, check into the hotels, getting on the flights, getting treatment in the morning, doing press, like the stuff behind the scenes you don't really see. I just love that stuff. So I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, be honest. You like the All or Nothing series because your boy was credited on IMDb in that series a couple times. You heard my voice in there. I think episode 2 and 3, but who's actually fact checking on that?
Oh wow, you didn't have that written down or anything? I didn't know.
It's amazing. I don't know. I guess they sifted through me and Gord Stellick's pre-intermission and post-game shows and found like three quotes of me, but one was pretty electric. Just talking about Austin Matthews. I'm like, I have no more superlatives to describe this guy, but the way they like taped it was kind of cool. I was like, that's me, you know?
Ah, guy gets
Yeah.
on IMDb. I'll have to look up your headshot on that site, buddy.
Yeah. So for
Congratulations.
anybody who thinks I'm too negative about the Leafs, I said some positive things and all or nothing. And great
Wow.
name because it ended up being nothing.
When I was visiting, watching the game, we were watching pregame skate, and Dubas came up the stairs, and my kid was sitting beside me, and he goes, "Hey, I saw you on All or Nothing," and he went, "Yeah, that didn't work out too well for us." And I was like, "Right, that's the GM of the Leafs, buddy." That was kind of neat. But I
Awesome.
like those shows regardless of how they end up, man. They're pretty neat. I wouldn't like it if I was a GM or a coach, but as a fan and a guy that doesn't have a lot of skin in the game, I like the access they give you.
Yeah, tell you what, at least it'll include a segment on Leafs Morning Take in the fall where we extensively break down the scene where Willie Nylander is watching the Leafs Boston series but not playing in it. So looking forward to that.
That is a rough one. That is a rough one. Don't take me back. Jesus.
It's a
We find
tough look, my
interesting
man.
ways to lose, man. Interesting ways to lose.
The thing, uncovering the what happened like a month and a half ago or a month ago was just to think that these guys just never get hurt in the regular season. It gets to the playoffs, they can't play. That's my lasting memory of the 2024 Stanley Cup playoffs for the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's unfortunate timing. That's it.
It was unfortunate. I don't know. I still got guys say, what do they have? The Nylander flu or the Matthews flu, just out
Tummy
of the blue,
aches.
can't
Yeah.
play. I can't blame them, dude. I do not think they're so soft that they're like, no, thank you. I do not want to play in the playoffs. I
No.
think it's unfortunate timing. And like I
Yeah.
said, they find the wildest ways to lose, but that luck's got to run out eventually. And hopefully they put themselves in a position this year to do better.
Cheers to that, my friend. Cheers to that. It's time for the last call brought to you by Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. So, whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365 as we get set for game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final. The Florida Panthers, the favorite, I think, around minus 140. I like the Panthers again in game 2. I like a Matthew Tkachuk assist. I will probably play Evan Bouchard's shot prop. There's a variety of different ways you can go. I expect a better effort from Edmonton, but I think you would be smart to play the Bobrovsky shot prop or save prop, I should say again.
Yeah, he's obviously feeling it pretty good. I think they'll solve him better tonight, but to me, I'm taking the tie at plus 300. I think this game goes into overtime. I think it'll be a little tighter. I also like the under, which I did in the first period, and the overall last game, which hit. But yeah, at this point in time, it's very crucial to limit your mistakes and play solid D. And obviously, the goaltenders are doing well as well. So reason to take the under. And I do think this game could go for overtime, which you could sprinkle on there too at plus 300 is good value.
You like Edmonton?
Fuck, I don't know, man. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it would be just phenomenal if they could get out of there with a split, especially after getting shut out game 1. I think they can just, if they just did better with their chances, like Nurse can't have 2 absolute head scratching blunders like amateur hour stuff that ends up in the back of your net. Like, you just can't do that, Nurse. You clean that up and finish your chances. On the other side, which they have the personnel to do that, I can absolutely see them getting back in the series with a split.
This is concerning for me because it sounds like you're an Oilers fan now. Like, I think that conversation about is Edmonton Canada's team, I think you're saying yes. I don't know if you saw my article that went viral the other day, my take. If you're cheering for the Edmonton Oilers in the Stanley Cup Final, you're not a real Leafs fan. And a lot of people question the article, but it's true. It's fucking true.
Hey, there's lots of did you just F-word it through some
Yeah,
stuff?
my bad.
That
My
was
bad.
unnecessary and dumb. We're trying to clean that up, Nick. Smarten up. But I don't buy that. I think you can have a second favorite team. I respect.
Edmonton's your team now. This is your team.
No, they're not. I am more of a Flames fan, but I mean, you got to respect what Edmonton's doing. I'm surrounded by
Respect.
people who love the Oilers. It's in Alberta. I hope they do well. It has nothing to do with the Leafs. They are not even in the conversation. So, do you want Edmonton to win or not? It has nothing to do with the
No,
Leafs.
I don't.
So, I don't have a problem with that. If Montreal was in the final, I'd kind of be ho hum. But if Ottawa was in, if Winnipeg was in, if Vancouver, like I'd be saying, let's go. I hope you do well. Like, why would I cheer for the Florida Panthers? I have no allegiance to them whatsoever. I find Edmonton more interesting and closer to home. So hell, I hope they do well. It's got nothing to do with the Leafs.
Yeah, the only reason why I want to see Edmonton maybe win is because my boy Adam Henrique's on the team. It was kind of cool to be there for Media Day. It's been 13 years since he got back to a Stanley Cup Final. But other than that, I rather watch Florida win. I think they deserve it, quite frankly. Just what that franchise has been through the last 5 or 7 years, building their team back up, the DNA they have, the way they play. They just check a lot of boxes. I don't care that they're in Toronto's division. I don't care that they're a rival. They're the epitome of what I want the Maple Leafs to be. And the fact that you get back to a second straight Stanley Cup Final after tasting defeat the year prior, I think you just deserve it more. And I just don't agree that I have to go for a Canadian team because they're in the Cup Final. And I want the Leafs to be the next team to win the Cup in Canada.
Oh, I do too. And I don't think that you have to cheer for Edmonton. I have no dog in the fight. I understand the two schools of thought. I don't think for a second that if the Boston Red Sox are out of it, they're going to cheer for the New York Yankees. I understand that mentality. I just don't have this vehement venom towards the Edmonton Oilers are not even in the same conference as the team that I'm, usually cheering for. So I don't really care. But yeah, I think Florida deserves to win. I think they have the edge to win, especially after game one. But I would rather the Leafs be the first ones to win the cup and bring it back to Canada, but that's just not happening this year. So is what it is. I don't have anything against, but I understand cheer for whoever the hell you want. It doesn't bother me one bit.
Hey, that's a fair rebuttal, man. And maybe at some point in time this week, we put together a list of Canadian teams and how we'd rank them in terms of if we want them to win a cup. I think Edmonton would be 1 or 2 on that list. Maybe Winnipeg would be 1 for me. 7 on my list would be Montreal. Never want to see that team win. Vancouver's 6. You got the worst fans in the league, the bitchiest fans in the league. Like poor Luke Gazdic. Guy gives an opinion. All of a sudden, he's like, get him off TV. Like, it's just so Canucks fans, man. Their feelings are hurt. So maybe we have that type of list later on this week. But hey, excellent job today. I know we took Friday off to reset a bit here, but looking forward to the next couple weeks. And somebody mentioned in the chat, free agency, I guess, just 3 weeks away today, which is kind of cool.
Jeez, that's going to come fast. The draft will already have come and gone by that point. So that's wild, man. Lots to look forward to here. And tomorrow we'll have a new Stanley Cup Final game to break down as well. So yeah, it's not that bad of a time considering how little there is in Leafs land to be juiced up about.
Yeah, it's true. Time flies when you're having fun. Thank you to everybody in the chat at the Leafs Nation 401. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button. Leafs Morning Take wherever you find your podcasts as well. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Don't forget to visit theleafsnation.com. Thank you to everybody in the chat. You guys we're outstanding as per usual. Producer Vic, bang up job for Jay Rosehill. I'm Nick Alberga. We'll talk tomorrow. Take care. Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.